Hi, and welcome to my C# WebDriver video series. In this video, we're going to look at two mechanics generated by web browsers. We're going to look at windows and we're going to look at alert pop-ups. So we're going to navigate to the Java test site. And on this Java test site, we have the ability to generate other windows and we have the ability to generate alert pop-ups. So before we start automating, let's quickly discuss what these two mechanics are. So first of all, this is, if you like, a instance of a web browser. In this case, it's Firefox. And we can say that this Firefox web browser is in fact a window. So on websites, when you say click on certain links, sometimes they generate more windows. So if we click on this terms link, for instance, clicking on this terms link created another window. Now, these two windows don't actually have any relationship. I can close one without affecting the other and so on. But the bulk of the discussion in relation to this is that we have the ability to create a window by clicking on another window. And we're going to look at how Driver allows us to basically take control over one window and onto another. And we are going to look at how Driver allows us to take control, or rather switch control, from one window onto another. We're also going to look at alert pop-ups. So to generate an alert pop-up, if we click on the contact link here and we just hit the send button, this generates an alert pop-up, or rather an alert message. An alert is basically, it's a form of a window opening up on the page, but it restricts control over your main window without you having to do on the alert pop-up first. So in this instance, I have lost control over clicking on the page without interacting on the alert message here. So another way to phrase it is, unless I do something on this alert message, I can't get back control over the window. So if I just click OK, then I gain control back over my main browser window. Now, this isn't exactly the same on all browsers. Some browsers do allow you to control your main window even if you have alert pop-ups open. But traditionally, when an alert is open, the purpose of an alert is effectively forcing you to do something with it first before you can carry on. And again, we're going to look at how we can automate controlling an alert window. So if we go back to our code, in our last code, all we did was we basically navigated to our site and we just checked the URL. So we're going to scrap this and we're going to look at these two concepts. So first of all, let's rearrange this code so it looks a little bit more neater. And let's just get rid of this altogether. So we're going to write two tests. The first test we're going to write is should open terms window. So this test is basically going to check that we are able to open a terms window and close it. Our second test is going to check that we should be able to close alert pop-up. So one thing we did in our test prior to adding these two in and removing the other was we navigated to our test site inside the test. Now we can obviously put the same code here, but we would end up basically repeating the same line in both tests. So a good place to put it would be in the setup method. So let's go ahead and do that first. So now what will happen is our setup method will effectively end up navigating us to the home page of our test site, in this case on this page. So from here we can now start looking at how to handle windows and how to handle alerts. So the first one we are going to look at is how to handle terms. So before we do that, obviously we will need to interact with this page. So let's try and get some information on how we can do that. So if I inspect terms, I can see that it has an ID attribute with a value of footer_term. So I can use this to click on this terms link. So I can say driver find element by ID footer term, and then click on it. So this will now end up clicking on this link here. Now let's take a moment. What are we actually doing? We're saying that we want to be able to basically change control from one window onto another. But before we actually click on this window, it makes good sense to basically save the current instance of the window that we're controlling. That way, if we change instances of the window that we're controlling, we always have a reference point to our original window. So the first thing we should do before we even click on this is actually save the instance of the current window that we are in control of. And we can do that quite easily by saying driver current window handle. This basically gives us the current window that we have control over, in other case our main window. So let's go ahead and save this reference point. We can now use this parent window string to, at any point in time, refer to our main window. So now that we have control over our main window, or rather we have a reference point, and we've clicked on the footer tab, what we now need to do is basically switch to the window that we've just opened. Now, we can do this in a couple of different ways, but the way that I'm going to do it is by using a forage loop. So I'm going to say for each string window in driver dot window handles, I want to basically switch to the window that I'm currently looking at. So let me explain what's happening here. We're using a for each loop, which basically is a shorthand of using a for loop. It gives us a little bit more control over the current instance, or rather the object that we're looking at in a collection of objects. So what does that actually mean? Well, in this case, driver.windowHandles actually gets all the current windows that are open as part of your driver instance. So if I say clicked on this footer term, I would basically generate another window. So when we get to driver.windowHandles, we basically have two windows open. So here what we're saying is for string window, in other case, the current window that's open in this collection, do this. Now, because we are currently in control of our main window and we only have two windows open, this loop basically just runs the once, and it effectively switches control over to the terms window. Now, to check that whether we have definitely gained control over the new window we've opened, it might make sense just in this instance to write a quick assert statement just to check. So if we go back and we click on terms, I am just going to do a quick assertion on the URL. So if you have a look, this URL here doesn't contain the word terms. However, this term window does. So this looks like a good candidate to use as a quick assertion, just to make sure that we've definitely gained control over this window here. So I'm going to say assert true driver URL contains term. So what this will do now is, assuming we have gained control over that window, we're just going to assert that the URL in that window contains term. Once we've done that, we are going to go ahead and close that window. Now that we've closed the window, we want to basically regain control over our parent window. And to do that, we can just use the switch to method again. So we can say driver switch to window parent window. So what happens here is this will basically close the terms window. Remember, we are still in control of it. And once we've closed the terms window, we want to switch the control back to the parent window. And again, just for good measures, let's write a quick assert statement here as well. I'm just going to copy paste this to save us some time. And instead of asserting on term, this time we're going to assert on index, because as you can see, index is part of this URL here. So this, although a very simple example, now basically shows us how we can switch control from one window onto another, do something with the window. In this case, we're just closing it, but there's nothing stopping us from, say, doing stuff like finding elements and clicking on objects, assuming if such objects existed. And once we're done, close it and switch control back to our main window. So the other example we were going to look at is how to handle alert pop-ups. So to do that, first we need to click on the contact link. So let's do an inspect on this. So this also has an ID attribute with a value of contact underscore link. Click on contact. And we want to click on the send button. So let's see if this has anything. This also has an ID with a value of submit underscore message. So I'm going to say driver find element by ID and then driver find element by ID and what this should now do is click on the contact link and then click on the send button. So once this has executed, what should happen is an alert window should generate. So now the question is, how can we interact with this alert window? So fortunately for us, WebDriver provides a class called the iAlert class, which allows us to handle windows. So I'm just going to say alert, and I'm going to call it popup. And this will be equal to driver switch to alert. What this will now do is basically use again the switch to method to switch to a current open alert window. So in this case, the pop-up will now reference the current open alert window. Just to check that we definitely have the alert window open, I guess we can try and do an assert on it. So when we click on the alert, we get a string saying name field is empty. So let's just write a quick assert statement to check that the alert window contains the empty string. So we can say assert true popup text contains empty. So assuming that we have control over the alert, we have some actions that we can perform on an alert. One being able to accept it. So if you have a look, when we have control over an alert, we have the ability to accept the alert as well as being able to send keys and get the text value of it. Now, alert messages traditionally only have two buttons, accept and cancel, or submit or decline, something to that effect. Sometimes alert can have things like input boxes. It's really rare, but sometimes web browsers do provide alert messages which need you to interact with them a little bit more than just clicking on a button. In our instance, we only have the one button, so we don't really need to care about anything else. So we can just say accept. What the accept method does is effectively clicks on the positive button on the alert pop-up. So a positive button would be an OK button, or an accept button, or a submit button, for instance. Finally, assuming that we were able to accept the alert, we're just going to do another quick assertion just to make sure that we're back on our main parent window. So I guess we can do a quick assertion to check that the title of this browser is contact. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so what are we doing in this test? So in this test, all we're doing is clicking on the contact link message and then clicking on the send message button. This should generate an alert. We are then trying to capture this alert in this pop-up alert object. Then we are trying to do a basic assertion to check that the alert message contains the string empty. Assuming this message is fine, we're going to try and accept the alert message. And then we're going to do a quick assertion to check that we are back on our main window by checking that the URL contains, not URL, the title contains the contact string. So let's save that, build our solution, and we're going to use NUnit's IDE to basically run through our test. So as you can see here, it's captured two tests, but both of which have not run. So we're just going to hit the run button and see what happens. Okay, so it looks like both of our tests fails. Let's have a quick look to see why they might have failed. Right, so okay, so I think I know what the problem with this is. See, here we're navigating to /web app, but not the index page. However, here we're trying to assert that we see the index page. Obviously, unless if you specifically navigate to the index page, you won't see the index page. So we can't actually assert on that. So what we should really do is probably assert on the title instead. And the title is home on this particular page, or rather contains the word home. So let's do that instead. So hopefully that's the first one resolved. The second one, contact underscore link. I think that's correct. Maybe this is not correct. Let me have a quick look just to make sure. Inspect. It's called submit underscore message. Okay, so let's change that. All right. So let's save, rebuild, and let's rerun the test and let's see what happens. Fantastic. Looks like both of our tests have now passed. So it looks like we should have checked a few things before going ahead and writing both tests together and trying to run them at the same time. But on the off chance, we now know that both of our tests passed. But more importantly, we now know how to handle windows, and we now know how to handle alerts. But the key thing to take away from this tutorial is that it is purely because of this method here, the switch to method, which gives WebDriver, in this case, robustness in trying to handle additional windows which are generated as part of interacting with a web browser. So in this video, we learned how to basically use this switch to method to handle windows and to handle alerts. And that's it for this video, folks. Thanks for watching. Hi guys, I really appreciate you watching my videos. And if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you already haven't, hit the subscribe button below. Also, follow me on Twitter, Facebook and Google. Links in the description below. Until next time, ciao.